Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is part of the Greater Manchester Chambers series of healthy communities building healthy businesses. And we're really happy to be bringing this type of programming to our community because we never hear the end of workforce development issues. And a lot of those are, of course, retention and attraction. And I know that is, a nationwide challenge right now, but certainly in the Greater Manchester area, it's one that we're working to help employers solve. And one of the ways that you solve it is by being the best, businesses for attraction and retention. And a piece of that, of course, is to support your employees in a very holistic manner and sort of pushing the idea of what an employer should support. And being the cutting edge business really requires that now. And so we're bringing different topics to you that highlight ways you can support your employees that you might not be thinking about, especially for HR professionals, but for leaders, for CEOs, for executive management, to really trailblaze and lead the way in supporting employees in different ways. So I think today's talk is going to be wonderful from that aspect because we have Susan McKeown with us, who is an author of a couple of books. She speaks on promoting healthy relationships and strengthening marriage, preventing divorce, and has also written books on the same topics, and now is looking to help employers to address and support the full individual that they are employing in really helping them to connect and deepen their family life, lessen stress in their family life, and really drawing that connection of how that increases productivity at work, which has been proven again and again. So Susan's books are, just so we make sure that we get those on there, Beyond the First Dance, which is a guide for couples to think beyond their wedding day. Love it. And her second book, Beyond the Tango, a guide for a thriving marriage while juggling careers, kids, and chaos. Totally understand that. And I think that I have read Susan's first book and it's amazing. So I definitely would recommend. They're both on Amazon, right, Susan?
They are.
Yes. Okay, good. It's funny. I've never had a no to that question, but I always just, want to check in. And in terms of Susan's background, besides being a wonderful author on important, meaningful topics, she has a whole career as a nurse practitioner that she's now retired from, and has worked with families for over 40 years as a certified prevention specialist, educating and advocating on mental health and substance misuse. She and her husband have also, I love how she says this in her bio, survived raising 4 adolescents and now have 2 grandchildren, and have been conducting seminars for engaged couples for over 4 decades. So certainly Susan is the one we want to listen to on all topics of the life's marriages. And I'm just going to stop talking and hand it over to you, Susan, to enlighten us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Heather, for that. And here we are joining in yet another Zoom meeting. So I know we all look forward to when we can get back in person, but this is a great opportunity. So stress at home can affect your work. Now, I suspect there's not a surprise in that statement to any of us. The good news is that unlike your work environment, home is a place that you have decidedly more control over the atmosphere than exists in your job. And workplace stress rocks marriages every day. And when you take the fact that most often both spouses are working, it can make for quite a pressure cooker at home. Stress is contagious. And when it's brought home from the work environment, it can impact families and marriages in an unhealthy way. How you strengthen your marriage and your life at home to be less stressful and more fun is what we're going to be talking about today. The result can be greater job satisfaction and productivity at work, and that's a real win-win for both you and your employer. I need to share 2 disclaimers. That as passionate as I am about promoting healthy relationships, strengthening marriages, and preventing divorce, I do feel that there are exceptions. First, I don't think everybody is meant to be married. I don't think everybody is meant to be a parent. And secondly, If in a marriage there's experiencing physical, emotional, or sexual abuse or domestic violence, and I emphasize the word untreated substance use or mental health issues, there needs to be a safe exit strategy because these are destructive to the well-being of both the adults and the children involved. Having spent my 41-year career as a pediatric nurse practitioner, I'm very cognizant of the effects of marital discord and divorce on children. Now, having said that, most marriage stresses and divorces are likely to happen because of much more mundane issues that build up over daily annoyances and frustrations. And I think of a story that always is rather humorous, but it's an elderly couple who had been married for 60 years. And when she got married, her grandmother gave her a box and she put it on the shelf of her closet. And she asked her husband never to talk to her about it or check it, which he didn't. And now she was very ill and dying. So she thought he should know it, brought it to the bedside, opened it up. And inside this box were 2 crocheted dolls and $95,000. And said, what's this? She said, well, when we got married, my grandmother told me to never argue with you, that if I got married, if I married you, that I should just never argue, and if I got upset, I would just crochet a doll and keep quiet. So, well, he was overcome with all this years of living and loving that there's only 2 dolls in this box. Oh my goodness, isn't this wonderful? Now that's about the dolls, honey. What about the money? She said, oh, that's the money I made from selling the dolls. So you see, it's not a great example of communication and emotional intimacy. And today, I don't think that kind of work would survive in a marriage. When these issues of frustration and annoyances aren't dealt with, they often result in resentment and indifference. And those are real marriage killers. Today, we want to look at healthy habits that are supportive of a healthy marriage. When you learn to pay attention to your daily habits and decide to create healthy ones, you can really lessen the stress and better focus on the good things in your life. When you hear the word marriage, what comes to mind? Well, for most of us, it's our primary relationship that you have with your spouse. But what you may not realize is that we actually have several marriages going on in our life. And many people feel that they're married to their job, their children, their extended family, their church, their community. These represent a lot of relationships in our life, and all of which demand a lot of time, attention, and energy from you. How are you juggling all of these? One tool that can be helpful is the balance wheel, representing all the different areas in your life. Now, this tool may be familiar to a lot of you. You can use Google and bring up different balance wheels. So there's lots of variations. This is one that I found worked well for me and us. We both used it, and it helped to see when we were out of whack. If you're not familiar with it at all, just 2 quick examples. You'll see the center has a 0 and the perimeters have 10s on them. And that means that you go and look at those different arenas of your life and put a dot on that spoke where you're at. If we can use the example of physical, okay, you just never miss jogging. You are out there every day, noontime from lunch, you go to the gym. So you might dot yourself up near 10. Now 10 doesn't mean great and 0 doesn't mean awful. It kind of is the intensity. And in that case, you dot that spoke of physical up near 10. If you look at health, you might say, well, when was your last physical? How about your lipid levels, your cholesterol, your BMI, your body mass index? Do you know them? The relationship of height to weight. Oh boy, no, I don't know my labs. I haven't had a physical in 3 or 4 years. Well, you're going to dig down around 0 to 1, okay? And you put a dot there. And you continue to do that on all those spokes. And then you take the pencil and you connect those dots. Now, of course, ideally, we'd all be at 5s and we'd have this nice little perfect circle. Well, anybody that ends up like that is probably a liar. So when you get done your circle, you look at it and you go, whoa, how would you like to ride on this wheel? It is often looks more like a blown out flat tire. And I can remember doing this, and we tried to do it, every 3 months or so, but as needed. And having just delivered the third baby, 2 weeks old, we moved into a new house. Okay, don't ever do that. That is bad on all levels. Hadn't sold the first house. Financial was out of whack. Looked like a horrendous circle. And the one we couldn't even put a dot on was social. And we have a lovely group of friends. We love to entertain, have people over for dinner. Hadn't done that in so long, we couldn't even remember. We couldn't grade it on the wheel. So we said, boy, that one is really out of whack. That's what we need to do. So that week we invited friends over for dinner on a Saturday night, and they came. And what do you have to do? You got to clean your house, you prepare a menu, buy groceries, you cook, you bring out those wedding presents, dust them off, set the table. Had a great time. And by Sunday morning, we were saying, wasn't that fun? We felt like we were entering the human race again, and we had a clean house to boot. So that was great. Some couples view their marriage as their wedding. They confuse the two, thinking of marriage as an event rather than a vocation. And, oh, it was a nice day, great, we had fun, we did it, now we're done, bingo, we can go on with our lives. In my first book, Beyond the First Dance, a guide for couples to think beyond their wedding day, I wrote it to remind couples that their wedding is the start of their marriage, the beginning of the rest of their life together. And that's why I list marriage here as its own spoke on the balance wheel, because it's not an event. It's a partnership that requires attention to be successful. And I use the metaphor of dance in my writing and speaking to talk about the marriage partnership, because I think that the flexibility and the fast footwork that's required to learn a variety of dances is an apt description of what it takes to build a strong, happy, long-lasting marriage. And even if you're not a good dancer, even if you do not like to dance, that stepping on each other's toes or twirling in the wrong direction is not going to bode well for a smooth outcome. And even if you've been married for years, it's never too late to improve your dance steps and add new ones to your routine. That's what keeps a marriage vibrant. Now, this pandemic certainly has highlighted a lot of friction in many marriages that never experienced this degree of togetherness that has resulted. And one fallout has been the number of young couples married 5 to 6 months that are inquiring about divorce. These couples have not even had enough time to figure out a dance that works for them. And then they're thrown together 24/7 and did not know how to handle the intensity of it. And even those of us long married find restrictions have been very challenging. But if you've gotten through this past year, you really have a lot to look forward to. The goal is to remember that your primary relationship is the priority over all your other marriages. Now, those of you that took Psychology 101 may remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'm not going to dwell on this, but just quickly, we all need our basic food, clothing, and shelter taken care of. And then secondly, safety needs, okay? And safety needs, as I can remind us all from having Kim's wonderful presentation, is important at home. It's important at the workplace. We have to feel safe. The belongingness and the sense of a relationship with our close friends and family is so important. And that again results in having our self-esteem needs met, where we feel a sense of accomplishment in our life. And that's what leads ultimately to feeling that we're reaching and working at our full potential. Now, children are often given as the reason that couples don't focus on each other. And so I created this marriage hierarchy of needs as a reminder of the importance of yourself, your spouse, and your marriage. And it's important to remember that you and your spouse came into this relationship as individuals with your own temperament, your own personality, your own hobbies, your own skill sets, your own careers. And that this is going to be the foundation of your marriage. These need to be acknowledged and nurtured. And you need to do this for yourself, and you need to do this for your spouse. And that's why I created the separation there, that you are individuals, but together you're creating the foundation of your marriage. Too often, as I worked with families over my years as a nurse practitioner, their hierarchy looked more like this, okay? The children were all up to date on their physicals, immunization. They took music lessons. They're on their sports team. They never missed a birthday party. They had sleepovers. And there was some time with the family. But then you ask them as a couple, so tell me, when was your last date? And I can remember one couple looking at each other and looking back and looking at me and then saying, well, I guess it was 8 years ago before the children. So what I would try to do is help them reverse it, and say, okay, let's talk about this foundation here. And, and then you get to the spouse part of it and tell me about when was the last thing you did something for yourself alone, by yourself, something you were interested in, played pickup basketball game, went to a book club. When was the last time you did something for you? And too often it was, no, can't remember. So it's keeping this in mind. Establishing rituals can result in daily habits that build strength into your relationship, giving you a firm foundation that can withstand the inevitable stresses of marriage. And there are many, and every marriage goes through them. As a certified prevention specialist, I write from the perspective of prevention because it's always easier to prevent a problem than it is to fix it after. And even if you've been married a long time, it's never too late. And the good news is you can start today. One way to put some new moves in your relationship is to look at your habits. Habits, we all have them. Some of them have been ingrained for so long that we don't even think about them. Some habits are healthy and some not so. And this is a good time to think about the ones that may not be healthy and how you can change them. It's amazing how minor tweaks can even change the whole rhythm of your day, which in turn changes the rhythm of your marriage. So let's look at some of these habits. Just in talking about this, I think of a quote from Norman Vincent Peale: repetition of the same thought or physical action develops into a habit, which repeated frequently enough becomes an automatic reflex. So it really is based on how we're thinking and how we're acting. It's our behavior that really turns into habits. So sometimes the very expectations we have for our relationship and the physical and verbal things that we're doing every day are the things that become our automatic reflexes. So those are things we want to pay attention to. Now, we're going to look at this bunch of questions here. If you look at this as a continuum, where you are now, where you want to be, what results you want. And if you glance over these questions, you're going to notice that they're all done in the first person. And that's because that's the only person who you can make a difference with, unfortunately. Wouldn't we love to change our partner, our boss, our kids, our coworkers? But it gets always back to us. But the exciting thing is, as we change ourselves, other people do have to change in reaction to us. So there's a lot packed into these questions. I wrote a whole book on it, so we can't get into all of them, but we'll touch on them and see what stressors you can deal with in a healthy way. So where's your marriage now? Where you want it to be? How do I want it to improve? And that's the thing of thinking about, what would I like to change? Okay. And then, am I taking responsibility for that? Am I taking responsibility for me and what I'm contributing here? How do I start my day? Ooh, some people start their day, they get up, they grunt at best. They got to have that first cup of coffee before they can even be civil. Okay. Really? Okay. Is that something that you could look at and say, wow, what if I really tried to get out of bed and say good morning to my spouse, maybe even a peck on the cheek? How would that change things? And I think there are two questions. One is right up there. How would I like to be married to me? And then, what's it like to be married to me? You take those two questions and embed them into your brain to ask periodically, to look at, what is it really like to wake up next to me, to come home to me? And we're always looking to how our spouse can change, but we can change some of that. How do I connect during the workday? Do you connect at all? Okay. Are you making any effort to do that? Can you send off a quick text? Even if you're having a sucky day, oh, my day is really tough. Can't wait to see you at the end of the day. Look forward to dinner together. Thinking about you. Anything that can change the whole feel of the day. How's technology helping or hurting your marriage? And am I willing to shut it off? Now, at work, technology runs us. We got to pay attention to technology at work. But you know what? Some of us forget that when we get home. We don't have to pay attention to technology at home. We can be in charge of IT. It. Is it in control of you, or are you in control of it? Can you shut it off for 20 minutes? Can you greet each other at the end of the day? Can you sit down to dinner and have 20 minutes of no interruptions? Ignore that vibration in your pocket. It can wait. That shows a whole different level of connection with your spouse. When have I shown gratitude and appreciation today? Am I counting my blessings? Wow, how much easier it is for all of us to look at what's lacking, what we need to change. And yet, if you focus on, there's been so many studies done focusing on gratitude and how that changes not only your relationships, but your health. And what am I doing to keep myself healthy? How about exercise and checkups? Do you get in some exercise every day? Have you had your checkups? It's not the responsibility of your spouse to monitor your health. You need to do that for yourself and not have to be nagged about it. That adds a whole different dimension to a relationship when one spouse has to nag another to do things. Am I taking time for solitude and encouraging that with my spouse? Quiet time to think. Wow, that's hard to get these days with again, all the technology and things bombarding us. But we can decide to shut it off for 15 minutes a day and do nothing. Just let thoughts come in, let thoughts come out. Mindfulness, where you just do that, makes such a difference. And really encouraging your spouse to turn it off and to have that time alone too. How do you connect when you arrive home? Do you walk in the door again, kick the cat, yell at the kids, grunt at the spouse, grab the remote, grab a beer? What do you do when you come home? Okay, that can change the whole temperature of your house, the whole temperature. And walking in and greeting your spouse by name again with a quick hug, peck on the cheek. I mean, yes, if you haven't done it, they may be completely startled. Okay, but would that not change the pleasantness of the evening? When's your next date night? Have I scheduled this? I wrote a blog on this a few weeks ago, and one of the young teachers at one of the schools, I loved it, emailed me back, just set a date with my wife. I said, okay, people are reading the blogs and doing something, and those little things can make such a difference. So tonight, when you come home from work, what could you do differently that might change the temperature of your household to better increase the chances of having a pleasant evening? You've met with the boss. He's on your case about a project that you're working on. You had a long commute at home. You walk in the house, you're miserable. But what can you do to change that? How could it go differently? And you can make the difference. Are you building time in every day to connect with your spouse? And that means alone, with no children and no technology. For some of us, it means staying up much later, okay? But you know what? It's worth it. Even if you're tired, give that 20 minutes to each other of undivided attention after everything quiets down. And that sense of connecting, you need to connect about your schedule and set up what your week is like and make sure everything's covered. But it's also touching base with, how are you? How are you? And these are times where you might talk about some of the difficult things. And by the way, date night is totally separate. Date night is when you do not talk about problems, all right? That's totally different. That's for the connection every day where you deal with things. And by the way, I have whole seminars on this, but once a month you sit down with the money part of it, because money is the number one friction in marriages. Even if you got a lot of money or less money, it seems to be consistently the number one issue on relationships. So you have a once a month talk on that, but every night you talk about the individual things that are going on. So they're not allowed to build up into resentment and indifference. That's what you're trying to avoid. But date night is, you talk about the good things you're looking forward to, the trips you want to take, what you are going to be doing this weekend, fun things. So there's the difference between the two. So when you want to focus on a habit, and pick one, don't pick 10, just pick one that you want to change. Focus on that and understand that it takes 21 to 66 days to change a habit, and sometimes as long as 6 months if it's really been ingrained in your lifestyle. So be patient. It's not easy to learn a new dance either, okay? You got to take the time to learn the steps and get the rhythm. So be patient with yourself. What do you think the fastest growing segment of the population seeking divorce? Well, before you answer, I'll just tell you, surprisingly, it's those people married 25 to 30 years or more. And there is even a term to describe it, and it's called gray divorce. For these couples, taking such a drastic step is not an impulsive decision. It's not something that they just woke up and decided, we're going to get divorced. It usually reflects years of missteps and resentment and indifference that have built up, and they've often put their relationship on the back burner. The last child leaves home, retirement is looming, and they look at each other and they go, "Who are you?" Too many couples decide that they don't want to spend their remaining years like this. They may be bored, resentful, indifferent. They're looking for a second act. Are there things that could have made a difference? Well, as a prevention person, an unequivocal yes for me. You just need to pay attention, and you need to pay attention to the little things, and you need to pay attention to them every day. And there's a cartoon I saw years ago. I wish I could resurrect it, but it's a couple standing out in the driveway, and the last kid is obviously driving off to college, and she's standing there, mama, and she's crying, and she looks at him and she says, "George, you're all I have left." And he said, "Emma, I'm all you started with." And isn't it the truth? But they've forgotten. And so here, now that the last child has left home and left for college, Dot and Neville went through the usual empty nest grieving process. And they've kept their dance alive, and they're anything but grieving. So isn't that the way? I know his neighbor. Isn't that the way that you would like to end up, having a dance that's looking forward to things? So anyway, which way do you want to end up? Pick it and do something different today that can make it happen. So anyway, for those of you that are watching that are, CEOs, this is obviously was directed for anybody but employees. The emphasis was on employees. But there's a series of workshops that I do that are available to support your staff in strengthening home and family life and resulting in increased job satisfaction and retention and work productivity. And you know that those are issues today in the workplace, holding on to the good ones and letting people enjoy their job. And so, workshops on self-awareness and communication, healthcare and self-care is a big deal. Issues and financial stress, those are all things that can be done in workshops. So that's it for me, Heather.
That's amazing, Susan. Thank you so much. And I definitely encourage all employers to reach out to Susan, because her workshops will really make a difference for your employees. And, I think about if I were in a larger organization, especially, but certainly for our chamber as well, you think about that emotional connection that's created when this type of support comes from your employer, and the loyalty that it creates, which again, has been proven by productivity and, surveys of employees time and time again, but just as common sense, right? It's wonderful to support the holistic individual, and that constant separation of personal and professional that our society breeds is starting to come together, and it's wonderful to see. And a lot of the young professionals, that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for that old hierarchy or that old separation of personal and professional. They're looking for employers that really embrace the dance that Susan's talking about, the dance of life, right? So thank you so much, Susan. I'm glad you have your contact information up there. Anyone who wants to reach out to Susan or wants more information on her programs, please do. I know you won't regret it. I'm going to stop the recording now so we can openly talk with attendees. And so thank you all for joining us.